Hello, how is everyone today? So, we talked Steelers offense, and I got a couple more nuggets I found since we talked last that I want to share with you before Monday night. Let's just dig right in, but we're going to mostly talk about Steeler defense in this podcast. So, how about this? In week 1, Cleveland pressured Joe Burrow on 36.4% of his dropbacks last week. And that was despite Burrow getting rid of the ball in 2.5 seconds or less on 74% of his throws. That was the highest rate of the week. So he got it out in 2.5 or less, higher than anybody, and he was pressured a ton. Now Kenny got the ball out of his hands in 2.5 seconds or less, just 35% of his attempts. The second lowest rate. Burrow got it out in 74%. Pickett got out in 35%. It's a magic number with Kenny, by the way. This goes back to all of his starts. I know there's only one this year. When the ball comes out in 2.5 or less within the structure of the play, he's quite good. Longer than that, it goes haywire. I mean, that's becoming a theme. Now, that doesn't mean that Matt Canada is off the hook and he calls a perfect play. Because if things don't develop in 2.5, well, that's not the quarterback's fault. But in this case, it was mostly the quarterback's fault. Okay, one other nugget here about this game from this side of the ball. The Browns were amongst the most man-heavy defenses in the league in week 1. They also allowed just 1.3 yards per coverage target while in man, which is phenomenal. That was the second best mark in the league this past week. However, in week 1, I think I told you this before, Deontay earned the league's highest receiving grade versus man coverage. But he ain't playing. However, he was the only Steelers wide receiver to record any fantasy points against man coverage in week 1, which means any production. Which is concerning. George Pickens should be avoided this week in a strong man-heavy Cleveland defense. That's obviously a fantasy note, but you get the drift. All right, let's dig into when Cleveland has the ball. And some of these are broads. A lot of them are for last year, much like the podcast from a couple days ago. Browns, 5.3 yards per play. That was 18th. And this is last year. Steelers gave up 5.5, though, which was 20th. Plays per game. Only 5 offenses ran more plays per game than the Browns last year. When combining rushes of 10 yards and receptions of 20, only 6 offenses had a higher percentage of such plays than the Browns. But the Steelers' D was 8th best in yards per carry allowed. Not last week. Pittsburgh's pass defense was 25th in yards per attempt last year. Not great. They were the 6th heaviest blitz teams in the league in 2022. I do think that will continue in this one. I think there's going to be a lot of interior blitzes in this game by the Steelers. Last year, they were in dime 19% of the time. That was the 5th highest in the league. But in week 1, they were in their base 3-4, 41% of the defensive snaps, which was the 3rd highest usage. The Steelers were only in nickel 38% of the time last week. That was the 31st highest percentage. Now, the Niners are weird, so I'm not going to look too much into that. Last year, the Browns threw the football on first downs 43% of the time. League average is 50%. However, Cleveland generated 8.3 yards per attempt on first down, which is a whole yard higher than league average. They didn't throw the ball a lot on first, but they were really good at it when they did. Only 3 offenses ran more plays last week than the Browns. It goes back to them running a lot of plays in last year, too. On their first down snaps in week 1, Cleveland produced a first down 26% of the time. Only the Dolphins were better. Last week, Cleveland utilized play action on 45% of their dropbacks. That was the highest percentage of any offense in week 1. That's definitely going to keep up. 9 different Browns were targeted in week 1, and 7 pass catchers saw multiple targets from Deshaun Watson. So spread the ball around. In 10 career games against the Browns, TJ Watt has 15 sacks, 17 tackles for loss, 24 quarterback hits, an interception, and a fumble recovery. He's had multiple sacks against Cleveland 3 different times, and now he gets a backup right tackle. Alex Highsmith had 4 sacks against the Browns last year, and overall, in those 2 games, the Steelers' defense sacked quarterbacks 9 times. Steelers had 9 sacks in those 2 games, 4 from Highsmith. Watson, meanwhile, was sacked on 10.5% of his dropbacks last year, 39th best percentage. His 3.27 time to throw was the highest in the league last year. Similar issues. Sacks could be a thing in this game. With Watson in the lineup, Browns offense generated just 1.2 points per drive, which was 30th during that prime frame. This is last year. Over his 6 games last year for the Browns, Watson completed a career low 58% of his passes. He also would have a career low marks in yards per pass attempt, yards per completion, and touchdown rate, while 2.9 of his interception rate was the highest since Watson's rookie season. He was that bad. The Browns had fewer than 200 net passing yards in 5 of their 6 games with Watson as the starting quarterback. But in Watson's 3 full seasons, he has never dipped below 4,400 passing yards and has an 89-29 touchdown interception ratio. In his last full season, but that's all the way back to 2020, Watson's 4,800 passing yards led the league, and he had a TD interception ratio of 33-7. Seems like a million years ago, though. On passes of 20 or more yards downfield, Watson threw 2 interceptions against just 3 completions in 2022. Think about that. All of his passes he threw 20 or more yards downfield. He had 3 completions, or 2 interceptions and 3 completions. It's crazy. Quick break here. We'll come back, talk about the rest of this matchup. All right, here's some Amari Cooper stats. Last year, he had the highest team target share and target per route run. Those are the best of his career. He was targeted 132 times. That also matched his career high. His 9 receiving touchdowns were also the most of Amari's career. But he averaged 0.64 touchdowns per game with Jacoby Brissett as his quarterback compared to 0.33 with Watson. Still, just on the Watson throws, Cooper did lead the Browns in targets, catches, receiving yards, and first down conversions. His 18 red zone targets were 10 more than any other Browns receiver last year. He was 8th in receiving yardage and 9th in catches at home, compared to 39th in catches and 21st in yardage on the road. How about this? For his career, Amari Cooper has scored 34 touchdowns at home versus 21 on the road. His average is 9.9 yards per target at home versus 7.5 on the road. Pretty crazy splits. His 2.16 yards per route run was 17th amongst all receivers in 2022 too. He had a great year, but his home road splits are bonkers. That's all his career and in the Brown uniform. Donovan Peoples-Jones had a 7-game streak of producing at least 50 yards last year, but fell to under 45 receiving yards in 6 of his final 7 games when Watson took over. Last week, Cooper only played 45 snaps compared to 66 by Peoples-Jones and 52 by Elijah Moore. Cooper only ran a route on 22 of the Browns' 35 pass plays, where the other 2 ran 28 routes. He also left for a bit there with some sort of injury, and I don't think he played a lot at the end. He only played 4 of Cleveland's fourth quarter snaps and 11 of the Browns' 17 first quarter snaps too, though. So didn't play a ton at the beginning. I think that's when he got dinged up, and he didn't play much at the end. Peoples-Jones and Moore were each in the game for 80% of Cleveland's pass plays compared to 63 from Cooper, and Moore's 23 target rate led the team. Moore ran 18 routes from the slot and 10 routes from the outside. I'm a big Elijah Moore fan. Against the Steelers last week, not only did Brandon Ayuk catch all 8 of his targets, but all 8 of those targets went for either first downs or touchdowns. His only catch that didn't gain at least 10 yards was an 8-yard touchdown. Okay. In 2022, only Travis Kelce had more red zone targets than David Njoku amongst all NFL tight ends. Amongst all NFL tight ends, Njoku finished 8th in both receptions per game and receiving yards per game, But Njoku generated 1.89 yards per route run with Brissett versus 1.03 with Watson. Njoku did receive 10 red zone targets from Watson. No other Browns pass catcher had more than 6 with Watson behind center. Just 6 tight ends had more yards after the catch last year than Njoku. Really good player. Last week, 3 Brown tight ends played at least 21 snaps. Njoku had 56 of them. But Njoku, Harrison Bryant, and Jordan Atkins were often on the field together in 13 personnel. That's something you'll definitely see. Bryant and Atkins were in the game for 23 and 20% of the team's pass plays compared to 71% from Njoku. But Njoku was targeted on just 12.5% of his routes, the lowest percentage since week 1 of last year. This is a big deal, too, I think we're going to see a lot of. Cleveland used 6 or more offensive linemen at a higher percentage of their snaps than any offense in the league last year. Last week, they used this tactic on 5.6% of their snaps, the second highest percentage in last week. You're going to see extra beef on the field, extra tight ends, no doubt, extra offensive linemen, no doubt. Browns rushed for 5.5 yards per attempt last year, which is well over league average of 4.8. Last week, they were at 5.2 per carry. In the 2 times these teams met last year, Cleveland ran the ball for 305 yards on 60 carries. That's 5.1 per rush. Watson averaged just over 29 rushing yards per game in his first 6 games last year. Last week, as you know, the Steelers allowed 188 on the ground. The Browns rushed for 206 on the ground in week 1. How about this? Over the 2021 and 2022 seasons, Nick Chubb gained at least 10 yards on 16.6% of his rushing attempt. He also gained 20 or more yards on just under 5% of his rushing attempts. Both are best in the league. Since 2018, Chubb ranks second in rushing yards as well as rushing touchdowns. He's been held to under 30 catches and 240 receiving yards every year, though, under Kevin Stefanski. He averages just 31.6 targets per year since entering the league, and over the past 3 seasons, Chubb has played just 53% of the Browns' offensive snaps. Last week, he only played 49% of the Browns' offensive snaps. This is crazy. Throughout NFL history, this is how good Nick Chubb is. There's 129 instances of a running back averaging 5 or more yards per carry with at least 190 carries. The only runners with more than 3 such seasons in their career, Chubb's done it 5 out of a possible 5 times. The others are Jim Brown's done it 9, Barry Sanders has done it 10, Jamal Charles has done it 11. Chubb has never finished worse than 8th in the league in yards per carry since his rookie year. He's a superstar. Last week, Chubb ran for 106 yards and caught 4 passes, the most of any Browns player. However, Chubb and Jerome Ford were each in the game for 34% of Cleveland's pass plays, but Chubb was the only running back that earned a target against the Bengals. Still, of the Browns' 13 plays on third downs, Chubb was only on the field 3 times. He did receive a 64% overall touch rate and 11% target share. His career average to this point had been 52% and 6% respectively. So he didn't play a ton of snaps, but when he was in there, they sure used him. But Chubb has yet to score a rushing touchdown as the Browns quarterback. With Watson in the game, Chubb has never found the end zone as a runner. As a team, the Browns gained 82 rushing yards before contact in week 1, second highest in the league, and now Cam Hayward's on the game. Browns' offense was 26th in second quarter scoring last year, but 8th in fourth quarter play. The Steelers' defense has allowed 21 or more points in just 14 games since the start of the 2021 season. That's the 4th fewest in the league during that time. Cleveland's offense, doesn't matter for Monday night, but it's the most expensive in the NFL by a wide margin. They have $20 million more committed on this side of the ball than any other team. And that's with Watson only counting $19 million against this year's cap. Next year, he gives $64 million cap hit. Not only is that a record high, but it remains at that level for 3 straight years. So they're spending $20 million more on offense than any other team, even after restructuring Watson to only count 19. Next year, he's 64. Same with the 2 years after that. A couple more things to rack this on up. Steelers defense was above average in zone coverage rate in week 1 against the Niners. They struggled significantly, though, allowing more receptions than any other defense when playing zone. They allowed 8 yards per coverage target, which was 25th. All of Amari Cooper's week 1 success came against zone coverage, which included a 31% target rate, leading all 3 of his week 1 receptions. Leading to all 3 of his week 1 receptions. He earned a very good receiving grade versus zone, bad receiving grade versus man. That's a Pro Football Focus thing. Cooper has caught 4 or fewer passes in 6 of 7 games with Watson, which includes 5 performances with fewer than 60 yards. As you know, TJ Watt took Purdy to the ground 5 times, 3 sacks and 2 hits, the most knockdowns of any player in week 1. So not only did he have 3 sacks, but he had the most knockdowns. Last thing I got for you. Watson is only averaging 28.5 passing attempts per game since joining the Browns last season. To me, you got to make him throw. You know, if Chubb beats you, Chubb beats you. But, I mean, he's such a good player that might happen no matter what. But you got to sell out to make Watson throw the ball as much as possible. And we'll see. But a lot of information there. You might want to rewind through some of it. Hope it's not too tedious and redundant, but a lot of you have given me great feedback on these. So talk soon. Over and out.